Enough time has now passed for us to fully digest the UFC 259 main event contest between the light heavyweight king Jan Blachowicz and the rising middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. Now, we've already made a video discussing the performance of the victor Blachowicz and what it means for his career, as well as a separate video on the bantamweight title showdown between Petr and Aljamain Sterling. So if you haven't checked those videos out, I would urge you to do so as soon as you're finished with this piece. Before this video, we're going to zone in on the Last Stylebender and what this first professional MMA setback means for his career as a whole. So let's get into it and see what pops up. For those of you who were expecting a career best performance from Adesanya, it was hard not to be at least a little disappointed with what we actually got when all was said and done. Personally, I love a good spanner in the works and an underdog getting a win in such a pivotal matchup, and as a result, I couldn't have been happier for Blachowicz once the final bell rang. But again, with Adesanya serving as the focus of this piece, I suppose the first question is what exactly went wrong in there for him, because this was a competitive fight that either man could have found the victory in. Straight off the bat, I do think that Jan is a bad stylistic matchup for Adesanya. Of course, the size was a constant factor, and though he didn't look for it initially, the takedown was likely playing on Israel's mind to at least some extent. Overall though, I do believe that it was that punching power and Blachowicz's sneakily efficient use of it that caused some hesitance from Stylebender on the night. I think the thing that separated this fight from, say, Adesanya's showdown with the equally fearsome Paulo Costa is the level of respect Israel clearly had for Jan's ability to find his mark. Where Costa is something more akin to a battering ram, there is a level of subtlety and finesse to what Blachowicz brings to the table that sets him apart. He's no Anderson Silva sniping his opponents with little to no telegraphing, but I do think there was a level of respect shown by Adesanya to Blachowicz in this fight that likely came about as a direct result of both his team's study of their opponent and his first taste of this Polishman's power in those early exchanges. I was far from the only one to point out pre-fight that the pairing of these two methodical fighters could well bring about a slow and patient contest, and for the most part, it was indeed a pretty technical affair from start to finish. Jan's X-factors in there, his power, his physicality, and his vast experience at 205 pounds, these things allowed him to maintain a level head against the more physically slight Adesanya, and over the course of the 5 rounds, I was pretty shocked at how much success he was able to have. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to leave a like before subscribing to the channel to keep the MMA dive train moving ahead. Cheers. Was Israel overly tense? It is hard to know. We've seen him play the slow game against Yoel Romero, just like we've seen him open up and go to war with Kelvin Gastelum, and I think over the course of the 5 rounds we saw in the UFC 259 main event, my main takeaway was that Adesanya did look a little hesitant to take risks and open himself up to the possibility of eating a huge counter. That is the leap to 205 pounds and the disparity in weight and size coming into play. I'd be lying if I told you I didn't expect a more game approach from Stylebender, but Jan did a wonderful job at setting the table straight off the bat. And from the first bell to the last, he followed a game plan without fail, meeting Adesanya in the striking before later using his wrestling to win those crucial rounds and retain his belt. And it wasn't a case of Adesanya being found out, per se. I think he has already proven himself to be a solid grappler and a difficult fighter to get to the mat. But those takedowns landed by Jan in open space were there all night, and I think that Israel's habit of leaning away from shots will be something that we see more and more fighters attempting to exploit for the takedown. Guys like Paulo Costa and Derek Brunson were completely flabbergasted by the movement and dexterity of Israel on the feet, and through their sapping confidence and the time he was able to spend making reads, Izzy was able to surgically pick away at these guys, finishing them before they had the chance to open up. But with that power disparity and Jan's confidence in his ability to control the fight from top position, Adesanya was left with less to work with than we've ever seen before. After that 4th round where Blachowicz finally started to assert his wrestling, Adesanya needed that 5th round to take the fight, and while he did have some early success in the final stanza, he just couldn't open up enough to sway the fight's momentum. The risk management after feeling the top pressure of Jan began to take hold, and when the takedown did finally come halfway through that final round, while it did come on the back of a good early showing from Adesanya, he just didn't have enough in his locker to threaten Blachowicz enough to keep him off of him. And when that takedown landed, it really did seem as though the fight was over. And look, there are reasons why this was the case. There was easily a 20 to 25 pound weight gap between these two, with Israel hitting the scales at 200.5 pounds and Jan likely cutting down from at least 225. Again, it wasn't a devastating defeat by any means, but through this fight there were indeed lessons to be learned about potential flaws in Israel's overall style and approach. I do believe that this guy is a special talent and can rebound from this setback and potentially even round out his game enough to challenge at 205 pounds again. But that time is not now, and I think that the future of Adesanya's hold on the middleweight division is a far more intriguing saga than it was prior to this fight. So all in all, I enjoyed the contest quite a lot. Sure, it wasn't a riveting battle in terms of of all-out action, but we learned a lot about both fighters, and all things considered, each of these guys are setting up for an incredibly interesting year. I'd like to see Adesanya take on the next top contender at middleweight, maybe over the summer. I know Robert Whittaker and Paulo Costa are signed to fight, and while sure, neither man had too much success with Stylebender the first time around, I do think that the victor of that bout should be a shoo-in for the next crack at the belt, especially if Robert Whittaker can move to 3-0 since losing his title to Izzy at UFC 243. But what do you think the future holds for the still reigning middleweight champion? Do you think he can make some tweaks and changes where necessary and eventually challenge at 205 pounds again? Be sure to let us know in the comment section below. We always love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thank you for watching.